Okay, I think we'll probably get started. So welcome again, everybody, for joining our webinar today, Change Starts with Bravery. My name is Jane Brown, Simplify Consulting consultant, and we're delighted that you've joined us today to discuss some of the topics from our white paper that we released in August. There were some real important key themes that came out of that research that we wanted to further discuss with our amazing panel that have joined us today. There will be a live Q&A at the end of our discussion, so if there are any questions that you'd like to ask the panel, please do use the Zoom functionality to submit your question, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can at the end. So as I said, delighted to welcome the panel, all female panel here today. So it'd be great if each of you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself to everybody. Kate Montserrat, could we start with you, please?
Yeah, hi everyone, delighted to be here. My name is Kate Montserrat. I am one of the directors at Simplify Consulting. Gillian, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Gillian Hepburn. I'm head of intermediary solutions at Schroders. I've been in the industry over 30 years, so clearly seen a lot of change, and I'm also on the advisory board at Women in Asset Servicing.
Thank you. Fiona?
Hi everyone, Fiona Richards. Until recently I was Chief Operating Officer at Rowan Dartington, which is a wealth services company. I am in the process of embarking on my next role, which is under wraps for now, so I can't talk about that. I've been in financial services for over 25 years. Like Julian, seen a lot of change. Not all of it good, or not all of it as I would expect. But I think there's a lot of interesting content and topics that are beginning to come to the surface that I believe we're discussing today.
Thank you. Julia?
Hi, I'm not from financial services. I am a social entrepreneur, and I run an organization called Know Their Brand, which focuses specifically on gender inclusion in business. So we work with organizations as well as individuals to help them foster inclusion.
Thank you.
Kate? My name is Kate Webber. I am the lead product manager for fund services at Northern Trust. And probably about 5 years ago, I founded Women in Asset Servicing, which Gillian very kindly helps me run.
Thank you. Welcome all of you. Thanks very much for your time today. Before we sort of go into the discussion on all the themes that we want to cover, Kate Montserrat, would you mind giving a bit of an intro into the paper, the activities that we have taken out this year, and some of those findings, please?
Yeah, definitely. So I think as a woman in financial services and a kind of joint business owner, I'm personally really passionate about gender equality across the board, but especially in financial services. And I think, like all of you have said, there has been some change, but I think probably not enough. So we wanted to delve deeper into the gender gap in financial services. So we did three things. We went and spent some time at school and spoke to some year 9 students to understand what they knew about financial services, what their kind of career aspirations were. Really interesting discussions with them, and really came out that financial services isn't on their radar. For female students, there were no role models for them to look up to. So there's a problem at the outset. We also surveyed 100 women in financial services just to understand their experiences. So have they experienced issues related to gender, to life events, to pay? And again, those results were really interesting, and to be honest, a bit sad that we're still experiencing some of those problems today. And then we spoke to and interviewed 11 C-suite women, of which some are on the panel today, to just have a bit more of a detailed discussion around some of the issues related to imposter syndrome, mentoring and role models and coaching, and also impacts of life events, and how the women have kind of succeeded in financial services, given they are female. I think just a couple of things just want to cover off. This isn't about men bashing. So at all, this is about having an equal platform for all. I think everyone agrees that it's about diversity of thought and inclusion as opposed to men versus women. This is a collective issue. And I guess just recognition that gender is just one of the diversity issues that we've explored, and we've really focused on that. I think there's recognition that obviously there are other problems in financial services, not just related to gender, but we've focused solely on that research.
Thanks, Kate. That's great for setting the scene. So one of the themes that we wanted to cover off first is imposter syndrome. A big theme of the paper, 100% of the women that we spoke to do experience imposter syndrome. And 4 out of the 11 that we've spoken to have had issues with confidence at work throughout their career. It kind of comes and goes. So this is something that we did want to explore today. So the first question I wanted to direct to you, Gillian, if that's okay. Would you be able to provide some insights into your personal experiences with imposter syndrome? And it'd be really great to sort of hear some of your coping strategies as well.
Sure. Thanks, Jane. Yeah, it's a great question, isn't it? I suppose for me, looking back, it probably started really early on. I'm going to blame my mum who's been listening in, so that's fine. I spoke at my very first external conference, and I gave her the programme. Those are the old days where they had a printed programme of the photograph, and she said, "Oh, people are paying to listen to you speak." I'm like, all right, thanks for that. You know, so you're kind of from day one. And then I got my first job as a graduate, and had to meet various people in senior management who said, "Can't believe you've got this job in financial services with only an English degree and went to that school," which was a local comp. So suddenly you're thinking, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I you know, you have to just look back and think about these. And even in recent times, I was very privileged to win an award last year for being in the investment industry. And immediately I thought, oh, please don't ask me any questions about investment, because actually I work for Schroders, but I can't tell you about all the detailed things that my colleagues can do. So, and it happens at numerous times. I think in terms of coping, first of all, it's recognising it. And actually, it's thinking about where you get your self-esteem from. Do you get it from other people, like my mum or other managers, or do you get it from within? Yeah, and actually, where I found some real help was through some coaching. So for me, you know, coaching and thinking about it and how it impacts me has been really helpful. And I appreciate not everybody is able to do that. But there's always, I guess, people around us who can sit down and talk to us about it and help. But maybe it's also about the theme of this conference, this webinar. It's about being brave, isn't it? And just going, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Julia, did you have any experiences that you wanted to share?
Yeah, when we were discussing earlier on, I was sharing how, you know, I do personal branding for a living. I do it all the time. I've done it for way too many years. And recently I was interviewed on the radio. And a friend of mine texted me, "How do you feel about being interviewed on the radio? But you must be so, you know, nervous." And I was like, funny enough, the radio is fine. I mean, it was fun. The lady was lovely. Every time I start a new client, they do personal branding, I have self-doubt. I walk into the meeting and I'm like, will I be good enough? Will the client be happy? Will, you know, and I started really, that stressed me out way more than being, you know, on the radio or anything. And my strategy for coping is that I really need to, you know, come and say, "Julia, you've done it." You know, you think about your positive clients. So they get, you know, you always had positive feedback and stuff. But I found it, because we were preparing for this event, I found how funny it is that despite the years of experience, there is still that self-doubt that, will I be good enough? And there was one thing I wanted to say that Julia mentioned about your mom. One thing I discovered recently, but because I'm a mom as well, that actually we should learn to say to the kids, "No, I'm proud of you, but you should be proud of yourself." Because it's this constant saying, "I'm proud of you," means they learn that being proud comes from external instead of internal. So I'm trying out with my kids. So it's difficult because you are proud of them. So they're like, "I'm proud of you, and you should be proud of yourself," every time they do something. But maybe for the next generation to help them.
That's so interesting. Brilliant, thanks for sharing that. Through the paper, Kate Webber, you inspired us all in the interviews actually at Simplify with your views on bravery and you know, how women should be brave and not perfect. So it'd be great to hear from you in terms of, are you seeing any improvements in this area yet through your work, and how can we help women to be more brave?
Okay, thank you. And thank you for those words as well. For me, we have to define bravery first of all, and bravery is a highly personal thing. So in my mind, being brave means that you're scared or anxious about something and doing it anyway. So that means that everybody has a different version of what makes them brave. So for the first time we do anything, you need a bit of bravery. Coming into a webinar every time needs a bit of bravery. And it can be as simple as speaking up in your own client meetings, answering back when we think something's wrong, right the way to public speaking. And I remember somewhere I read something where it said most people prefer death over public speaking, which felt somewhat extreme, I have to be honest. But I also find it like, for me, being brave means going into those big rooms, you know, when the coffee breaks in the conference, and starting small talk and avoiding things that are about football or rugby, or that used to be for me something that I would be very anxious about. The Brave Not Perfect bit comes from the Rashima Sujani book, which encourages people to stop, women in particular, to stop worrying about being perfect. And bravery and this obsession with perfection are kind of linked up together. So we've seen a number of examples this year alone, where women have found a way to be brave. So we had a Finding Your Voice event earlier this year within Women in Asset Servicing. We encouraged a number of women to speak publicly after an afternoon of coaching. Those very brave women were then invited to Funds Forum in Monaco and were asked to sit on a future CEO panel in front of this very senior audience. And that bravery to say, yes, I'm going to do it, took them somewhere they never would have thought they would have had a chance to go, to meet potential sponsors at a senior level, and come away with a greater ambition than it was just to go into that room and publicly speak. And two of those amazing women who have been involved in that over the last few years, Chimi and Laura Banfield, have also been nominated by Involve, the Inclusion Women Future Leader List. And that small piece of bravery has galvanized them into something incredible. One of the bravest things I've seen this year is one of our women in technology. She spoke to camera about having Asperger's and discovering about it in the last 10 years. And she talked about the things that she noticed when she walked into a room, about her depression, about how sarcasm is difficult for her to understand. Do you know, it was one of the bravest things I'd seen all year, and it made me cry. It made me cry. And so I believe that every time somebody does something brave, it helps the next person down the line. So if we all try it, we'll create this kind of Mexican wave of bravery, and we'll all just be incredible in the next generation. And I think we're beginning to see one too.
Fantastic. So just going on to the imposter syndrome and the paper, we did some external research that indicated that men and women experience imposter syndrome almost equally, but it's just the way that it's handled by each gender that's different. So whereas men would push through, women are more likely to not take that opportunity, which we sort of covered a little bit already today. So Kate Montserrat, how has imposter syndrome has it ever prevented you from taking an opportunity that you would be?
I don't think it's ever prevented me from taking an opportunity, but I'm always very aware. I have, like anyone, confidence issues, you know, self-doubt, the classic imposter syndrome. I don't think I've ever let it stop me from doing something, but I completely appreciate and understand how it could. And I think as part of our culture within Simplify, there's a sort of a phrase that the team will be very familiar with, where we say, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And it's almost just resonating with all the panel members, really. It's about taking those chances where, you know, you might fail, you will feel really vulnerable, you'll feel really uncomfortable, but when you do it, you'll feel amazing afterwards, and hopefully that will give you the confidence then to do it the next time, and it'll be less mortifying. I mean, I've had so many horrendous, mortifying experiences in my career that I could just bore you with, but it's never stopped me doing anything. It's actually just made me much more resilient, and now it's not that I don't care, it's just I'm just much more resilient and able to deal with the anxiety and the confidence issues. And I think, you know, I see so many amazing, brilliant women in the industry that lack confidence in themselves, and it's just really sad because they shouldn't do. We shouldn't have people feeling like they can't go for an opportunity because they don't feel they're good enough. Everyone is good enough, and actually it doesn't really matter if you fail. If you fail, you learn from it, and you know, you'll move forward from that. And I think one thing that has really helped me, actually, so I'm a co-founder, so my business partner, Carl Woodward, my partner in crime, he is a huge support and ally for me. We do things together. We're kind of 50-50 on everything, 50-50 in terms of ownership of the business, our accountabilities across the business, pay and reward, you know, we're the same, we're absolutely equal. And I think having him back me up in the financial services industry is huge, because it is quite a male dominated industry. And I think having support from men in the industry is also really, really important to kind of get over that sort of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we covered male allies, haven't we, in the paper? But Julia, did you want to share some of your insights as well on the male allies and how we can support each other better, men and women?
Yeah, absolutely. Like another brand, we are a strong advocate of women and men working together. We actually have programs called S+E, like programs, because I firmly believe that we can't change the world if we just sit among ourselves and talk about everything that goes wrong as women, because then it becomes just a circle of whinging. I'm sorry, but you know, honestly, I would be curious to know how many men actually are there listening to this podcast, to this webinar. Because the problem often, and I do a lot of events, is that you do events and there are a lot of women that are listening. We all nod and like, yeah, not the problem. But the people that actually could make a difference are not there. And not because they don't care, they just don't see the problem. So men allies are really important. A, because for the same way that Kate says, you know, they can inspire us, they can pave a little bit the way for us, although it shouldn't be the case. They can support us. They can really also see things in a very different way and help us see things in a different way. Like I always say, when I started my own business, first thing I did, I coach rugby, so full of men, obviously, and I went to the men and say, I'm, you know, doing this now social enterprise for women. What do you think? And they were super supportive, but also very clear in explaining me what was their point of view, what the challenges I would have faced, what I should do to consider, you know, the men's side of the business. It's incredible. They really can give you a different perspective on what you think, you know, and also to encourage you when we have a bit of insecurities, because they tend to be a bit bolder, they actually can push us a little bit harder. And also, the reality is, in many cases, the people that make decisions are men. So we need them to understand our, you know, the obstacles we face as women, so that they can act and help us change what is happening within the organizations. So I think that men and women need to work on this together. It is a fact that diversity benefits everyone, so they have benefit for themselves. It's just we need to educate them about the problems and the benefits, and being open to listen their feedback, because sometimes it's ourselves like, oh, but you're a man, you don't know, you can't understand. Being open to listen to them.
Yeah, thank you. We're just going to now move on to role models. So one of the other themes from the paper. And as Kate mentioned at the beginning, we spoke to a number of students at a high school, and none of them could think of a role model in financial sector, let alone a female role model. And a lot of them didn't, I think 57% of those female students didn't know enough about financial services to consider it even as a career. And Fiona, in the paper, you mentioned that when you were at school, career choices for you were seriously lacking, and perhaps if you'd have had something different happening for you, then you might have gone down a completely different path than the one that you had taken. So would you mind sharing, like, what do you think needs to happen in schools to sort of equip school children and support them?
Sure, thanks. I'm obviously not in the education profession or a professional educator, so my comments are very generalist. I do, however, see that, I mean, there are definitely indicators that the school system is getting this better, if not right, at the moment. You know, big pushes to make sure that there is equality across which subjects girls and boys take through their school years. And I would hope that that is representative across the whole school system, not just certain segments of it. I think the difference, though, in the issue is how and it's, when you think about role models, if you ask the kids the same thing about, you know, can you name or think of a medical role model, and they probably couldn't do the same either. But it's that age-old, you know, anecdote about when they think about a person, do they think of that person being gender specific? So when you think surgeon, do you think male or female? When you think banker, do you think male or female? And it's trying to break that down. And it's allowing girls, you know, at the school age, the opportunity to understand the number of careers that are open to them. I think from a school's point of view and from a system point of view, there's a big difference between saying to girls, you should choose physics because you're good at physics, and you're equally good at physics or better at physics than the boys over here. But actually turning that round into what could you do as a career if you had a physics degree or a maths degree, because, you know, the kids that, you know, we're talking about are obviously not just looking at the what am I doing for my A levels or higher. It's what are we doing after that? You know, once I go to university and I get a degree, what actual career choices are open to me after that point? And I don't see any of that. It's like, you know, the school system tends to be very much focused on the immediate short-termism rather than the how do you get a career and what careers are available to you with these subjects. And I don't think that's actually changed since I was at school in 1980, whatever it was, which I think is really sad. And I think that's what we need to start changing. But, you know, the problem, I see it, is cultural. And it echoes Julia's point earlier on about men just not necessarily seeing what the problem is. I think it's a mistake to see the cultural issue as generational. You see issues over and over again where decent, reflective, well-intentioned men and women are accepting of sort of everyday sexism and objectivism, where, you know, females are expected to do specific things and some conversations are off the table and men are expected to do other things. And until we start calling that out and breaking that down, the problem is going to propagate all the way through.
Actually, I helped one of the schools in the UK. I'm supporting them as a volunteer thing, and I was talking with the head teacher, and you know what you said about the gender roles, like we expect, you know, the surgeon to be a man and the nurse to be a woman. He very naively ordered a bunch of costumes as nurse because, I don't know, it was nurse day, whatever it was, and it was for 4 and 5 years old kids, you know, at reception and year one. And all of this arrived, and he was shocked because not only on the paper there were only girls, so the dresses were only female for girls, but they were also sexy. And he was horrified, like, how can I possibly give this to children? Like, you know, and if that is a company that feels that it's okay to send this kind of material to a school, we have obviously had to cancel everything, the event and everything. But luckily, it's someone that is aware of this problem. Someone else would have said, okay, well, the girls put this, and for the boys, we put the doctor clothes, you know, and that would have just continued this stereotypes. So still today, that's what we face.
Exactly, and I think, you know, that exactly illustrates the point that, you know, I'm trying to make, is that until we actually call that out, talk about it, explain in a non-aggressive, non-threatening way that we cannot continue to do that. When a 5-year-old kid talks to a grandparent or great-grandparent, and that great-grandparent or great-grandparent's expectations are of a different generation, or, you know, just a different set of experiences, then, you know, one bit of damage just has such a long-term impact. And until we start calling that out, talking about it, highlighting why it's a problem across both men and women, you know, I see women making the same mistakes as men do. We call ourselves girls. Why we call ourselves girls, and then we complain when men call us girls? We shouldn't do that.
Oh, thank you for that. So then moving on to the role models in financial services and women being able to aspire to some of the roles, you know, where women are holding down a successful career and they have a family. There seems to be that came out through the paper that seems to be lacking. We don't have people that we can aspire to. So Kate, you're kind of becoming a bit famous now, actually, of the role models versus supermodels. So would you mind sort of explaining to us sort of how you're helping in this area, please?
Yeah, so just to put a bit of context behind this, the supermodel thing came out, and I watched all these women, you know, traipsing down the catwalk. You know, they're a size 8 and 5'10", or, you know, 6 foot, whatever. And I thought that's really unattainable. You know, all these amazing looking clothes, and I try them on, and when I'm 5'4" and I'm not a size 8, it doesn't look like that at all. And when you get to a point in a career, we have got some amazing, what I might describe as supermodels within financial services. These are CEOs of our firm. They're really incredible. They are the pinnacle of what we might be able to achieve. But for many of us, they can be a little bit intimidating because it does feel a little bit unattainable. And so through our blogs and our websites and our events, what we're trying to demonstrate is that there can be role models at all levels of organizations. And I do fundamentally believe what they say. The Queen used to say, you know, you need to be seen to be believed. And you have to be seen to be believed at all levels. And so we think that by sharing stories, we can support people to do just that. So role models can be CEOs, but they can also be team leaders, they can be managers, they can be peers. And if we want people to work with more confidence than ever, we need them to be able to understand that there are lots of stories and there are lots of people out there, and those steps become attainable in degrees. There's no CEO, male or female, in the world who hasn't gone through their career being resilient. And those resilience are built up in stages. And therefore, sometimes just having role models that are really unattainable up here doesn't help people find that journey of where they want to be. I also worry quite a lot about role models in a post-pandemic world. I think a lot of people have become really, really anxious about themselves and about losing a lot of their innate social skills, particularly in the workplace. And so companies could help individuals come back into the office through the use of role models. And those people could become quite invaluable in helping everybody to shine back in a hybrid workplace for the future.
Yeah, so true, isn't it? Just having those people that you can aspire to at all levels, I think, would just be so helpful. And then Gillian, just coming to you on the podcast that you run, you've had women that saying around that they have to act like men to sort of you know, be successful. Basically, they need to act like men, and I think you're saying about you know, we all need to value ourselves and support each other, and through coaching and support. So can you go into how the women in platforms help to support this?
Yeah, sure. I'd take a step back, a number of areas there to cover. In terms of what these women said on the podcast. So shameless plug, if anybody wants to listen to the podcast, I ran them for a year and they're on the Diversity Project website. And we just covered a whole range of themes. And the purpose was actually about trying to get more women into the industry. I'd actually like to do another series on how we keep women in the industry. And that's for a whole other conversation. But, we tried to bust a lot of the myths about this, about why women don't want to join our industry or why there are not enough role models. I do love Kate's point, by the way, role models do not always need to be seen to be at the top of the organisation. And I think that's really important. But it was interesting that many of these women said, I felt like I had to act like a man and put on a dark suit and be, in their words, assertive or aggressive, and that they couldn't show emotion at work because that was too female. So some really great podcasts on some of that. And one of the women that came on the podcast said, actually, being able to show emotion is actually can be a superpower. And that was a really interesting whole debate that we opened up. So, do listen to the podcast. But in terms of what we did in Women in Platforms, it started in lockdown. We used to meet sort of quarterly for networking events. And it was all just, it was fun, but it was a bit unstructured. And in lockdown, we felt on week one that many of the women in our network were struggling a bit and needed some help and support. And, we had some women that said, I started a new job on a Friday, got given a laptop and told, by the way, you're now working from home. I just had no idea what was going on. We had some women who were team leaders who were saying, how do I manage a team remotely? So we felt that we could all support and help each other in a number of different ways. Once we got over the initial piece of that, we thought, you know what, we're doing these weekly calls. Let's invite other women onto the call to help educate us all. And let's look at where their strengths are and how we can support and educate, I guess is the right word. But we brought on lots of really interesting, both male actually and female role models across the industry to talk about what they do and have Q&A sessions and explore just a whole range of different topics. So I think there's some really interesting ways that we can help and support each other. I think what's also interesting about Women in Platforms, and I'm delighted about this, because what we've now done is we've passed the baton on to the next generation. I said up front, I've been in the industry a long time. So we felt it shouldn't always be run by perceived older or women with more experience. And we passed the network on to 3 amazing young women who actually wanted to do it. They asked. We didn't sort of say, would you like to volunteer, so to speak? And I think that's really important as well. So they are now becoming the new role models. And actually what they bring to Women in Platforms, so they're still running both virtual and now in-person meetings, is just fresh ideas from probably a different perspective, from looking at the areas that they want to cover, that what's important to them, while still having access to some of us who, I guess, set up Women in Platforms and have networks. So both male and female role models that we can help work with these women and help them look and focus on different topics. But I think it's really important that we actually are passing on to the next generation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It sounds fantastic as well that you've passed it on. Really great. I wanted to just cover now in the paper, calls for action and driving some of that change in the industry. We're all quite passionate that we want to see some changes. So Julia, just to go to you first of all, could you explain how your brand, No Lie Brand, is supporting women in business and like really encouraging them and helping them to develop, please?
Yes. So as I said at the beginning, I work both with organizations. So I help organizations realizing what the issues are and how to address them. But then I work also specifically with women. And we address some of the things that we talk about here today. So I work in personal branding. Personal branding is an extremely powerful tool. I love when Gillian before spoke about superpower, because that's what I talk about with my clients. Like personal branding is not about creating, a persona that doesn't exist and that you just bring to work. It's actually the opposite. is really about unpeeling your superpower, because we all have a superpower, because no matter what, we do have a superpower. Just especially women tend to forget about that. We tend to say, you know, every time someone gives us a compliment, you're like, oh, that was nothing. And we are educated, we're raised like this to say, you know, you should be very gracious and say that was nothing. But then actually we tend to think about it, like we think that was nothing, and it wasn't nothing. And so I work a lot to unpeel this superpower, find what I call the reasons to believe. So reminding ourselves all the good things that we can do and that we can bring to work. I focus especially on the work side, of course, but and then who we want to target, how we can communicate this superpower, but very importantly, how we can communicate it genuinely, in a way that is genuine to us, because we are all different. Success is different for each one of us, and the way we communicate is different, and we have to be genuine. So it's a very interesting process, and Kate demonstrated, you know, because I've done it for your company. It's really interesting, and it really helps us. I've done it for men as well. I do it still now, occasionally, because you know, someone asks, I'm not going to say, no, you're a man. Go away. But the impact that has on women is incredible, because, and I've seen it over the years. Like after a full journey, oftentimes they get promotions or they change job, because for so many years we tend just to accept the situation. We believe that just being good at work, that will demonstrate that we deserve a promotion, while men tend to be much better advocate for themselves. And so working on personal brand helps us to be ourselves, but just also advocate a little bit for ourselves and grow in our career.
Thank you. And Kate, would you mind going through some of the calls to action that Simplify are taking forwards to sort of try and drive some of this change within the industry?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just pick a couple of examples. There's a lot of things that we're working on at the moment, but we are partnering with some local schools. So we're going in, talking about career options for both male and female students, but giving them more of a breadth of what's out there for them, and also that they can talk to female professionals and understand how they got to where they are, and hopefully provide, you know, a role model for those students. We've also opened up the conversation about menopause at work. You know, we're actually quite we're about 50-50 in terms of gender split in our business, and there are, you know, women of a certain age, and we've just opened up the conversation both within the women. So we're sharing hints and tips and talking about symptoms, and it's just nice to have that support network to go, I had a horrendous night last night, you know, and have that kind of open dialogue, but also then opening that up to the male side of the business, just to raise awareness, because everyone has, you know, a partner, a sister, a mother, etc., who's actually been through the menopause. And it is something that we found through our research, and also externally through Davina McCall's TV programs, that does impact women later on in their professional career in a really adverse way. So we just wanted to kind of bring this issue to light within our business as well.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And then one final question before we open the floor to some live Q&A. I just wanted to ask, what's one thing that you think the industry should do to improve some of the things that we've spoken about today?
I can start on this because it's across all industries. So then I'll leave you the expert on. It's actually recognizing that there is an issue. Because most of the times I can't even finish to say what I do for a living, and people look at me and say, we don't have this problem in our company. A bit like Kate, you just say, you know, we are 50-50. That's in your organization, I know what it means. In other organizations, they say we are 50-50, but actually, if you look at the pyramid, it means that 60% of women are here, and if you're lucky, 1% is here. So it's really to take a hard look inside and be prepared to be challenged and to find out what really is going on in your company. That would be for everyone.
Yeah, and I would echo that, because I think what the industry needs to do is really challenge itself about the pathways to leadership. So in the last few years, we've started talking a lot about diversity targets, and they are really important, but they're only part of the story. We still have those old leadership pathways, which create leaders who have particular attributes, and those attributes might not necessarily be fit for the future. So forget leaning in, we need to figure out actually what we need to do today. And I think some of the work that I've been doing most recently about the future of work suggests that the future employees are not going to have the same passion or purpose for work in exactly the same way that we did. They're going to not necessarily just see higher salaries as their real purpose for work. ESG and some of those other things and culture of organizations are going to become incredibly important. Those people will walk off the reservation of those companies unless those companies fit what they want to be for the future. And so you could treat women as some kind of vanguard. We could be there to help describe what the future of work might be. And if you start listening to what we need, then some of those things might be not just important for you today in creating those diversity, but actually creates the framework for the future for those companies to be really relevant for the 21st century.
Yeah, I would pick up on something that Julia said earlier, which I really liked, was we can't change the world, right? And I think we still always got to recognise that we've come a long way, but we're still on a journey. And we've got to recognise differences, which I think is something that Kate was alluding to there. And that's differences in what will the future of employment look like? What do people expect? I often talk to young people about careers not going in straight lines. So, you know, many of us joined the industry and thought, I'm just going to be this job. And it's not like that anymore. So we've got to understand the differences and the requirements and the expectations of the next generation coming through. But I think for me, it's about creating the right environment for people, going back to the whole topic about being brave. How do we create an environment and a safe environment for people to feel brave and to, I guess, maybe behave in a way that potentially frightens them, but without feeling threatened, if that makes sense? You know, my catchphrase is always, you know, ask for forgiveness, not permission. So how do we encourage people to be curious, to use all the resources around them? And so I think we've still got a way to go, but recognise that we are making steps.
I think for me, sorry, you go, Fiona.
I think it's interesting listening to all of that, because my key thing that I think that we need to start moving forward on is that the industry needs to stop shying away from targets. And I think sort of reflecting on what everybody else has said, the way that we get to, you know, bravery and role models and, you know, providing an environment which is, you know, safe for women is for there simply to be more women, for there to be more role models. There are arguments that I see over and over again that I think are potential, and I re-emphasize potential arguments for not having targets. But I think the benefits of targets far, far, far outweigh any possible negative downside of that. You know, I can talk about this for days, but we have seen over generations men often for, you know, I don't want to make this about misandry, but, you know, men without the correct qualifications, often for political reasons, being put into roles. All we're doing at the moment is redressing that by putting women into roles also for political reasons. It will help enormously. And I think the arguments against, well, you know, the women aren't qualified, they absolutely are qualified. They're just qualified in a slightly different way. And we need to be conscious of that and continue to demand equality.
And if they are not qualified, it's up to the company to make some changes. Clearly, they are not giving the same chances to everybody. Why are women not qualified as much as men? So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And I think for me, just on a practical level, I'd just like to see more equality in terms of pay. I think one of the really sad statistics that came out of our white paper was there is still such an imbalance in terms of pay when you've got a man doing the same role as a woman. he gets more than she does. And I'd like to see that stamped out and companies being held to account on that, because that is unfair.
Thank you all for sharing. Hopefully if some of those things come off, then the working environment will be a much better place for everyone, I think, men and women. So we've finished the discussion. We do have a few questions. So I'll just start with the first one. Should everyone have a mentor in the workplace? Who'd like to answer that?
I'll put this one up because it's a topic I really love, because there's two questions. Should you have a mentor, and should they be in the workplace, I think? And I'm a big fan of, you can get mentors from all areas, right? They don't necessarily need to be in your workplace. So I would say they don't have to always be in the workplace. They could be in a range of workplaces, because often the skills that we all need are broader than just our industry. So that's point one. In terms of mentor, no, I don't think everybody needs a mentor necessarily, because for me, when I mentor people, I like to do it because they have a problem or a challenge that they want me to help them through. And I think that's the fundamental difference between mentoring and coaching. So when people write to me and say, will you mentor me? I always go back and say, where do you need some help? Because I might not be the right person to help you with that specific problem. I might be able to direct you in a different, to somebody else. But it's, for me, mentoring should be a bit about a focused area where somebody needs a bit of support. So maybe a long answer to a short question, but there you go.
So how do people find the right mentor? This is another question. How important is it to find that right person?
So it's incredibly important to find the right person, and there is a lot of work that's beginning to emerge which suggests that if you're linked with the wrong mentor, it can be as bad as not having any mentoring at all. There's some incredibly interesting work that people are starting to do. I met somebody recently who has a company, and she is using AI and behavioural science to link mentors and mentees. That's really clever, because if you start thinking about what that is doing, it's matching people who have needs with people with the right skills and personality types to get along. Quite often mentoring fails because people don't share values or are unable to open themselves up to somebody having different values. So it is really, really important to get the right mentor. And it's okay if you're in a mentoring relationship with somebody it's not working, to say, it's not working for me. Mentoring isn't therapy. It's something completely different. It has to have purpose. And sometimes it just ends up in these really long and boring conversations that are leading nowhere, because actually the fit's not right.
There is one thing, though, I would like to add on mentoring. I often been offered, companies want to come through my company to mentor women, the women that I have. And most likely I say no. I only recently accepted a company to help me with this, because the problem is that a lot of people want to mentor, and then they forget that it's actually a responsibility. So, I personally believe that mentorship is beneficial for both parties, the mentee and the mentor. But if you become a mentor, you need to take it very seriously, because people rely on you. And so you can't just disappear one day from another one, because then it becomes exactly what Kate said, is actually worse than not having a mentor. So if you decide to help someone, make sure that you dedicate time, and it's not that appointment to say, oh, I can move it because something more important is coming, so I'll just move my appointment with my mentee. It's really important to take it seriously.
Julia, I think that's a really important point about both parties can learn from this. I've been taking part at Shoulders in an inclusive mentoring scheme, and I was working with a lovely young Chinese lady, and I learned so much about how she felt bringing her culture to work. And I used to say to her after some of our sessions, I think I got more out of that than you did. She always disagreed, but I think it's such an important point.
If you could go back to when you were 16, what advice would you give yourself with regards to your career?
I'll take this one. Very simple: worry less. Chill out. I think it's back to sort of the imposter syndrome situation, where I think and being brave, you know, put yourself in this situation, or you put yourself forward for an opportunity that you really worry about, or you really worry about a meeting, and then it's not actually as bad as you ever really think it is. And I still tell myself this today, I think it's just chill out, worry less, and enjoy it. You never really enjoy these kinds of things, do you? Because you're just worrying about it so much and over preparing for it, and then, you know, all in this sort of vicious cycle. So that would be my advice to myself.
Okay, thank you, Kate. What can businesses do to help women during the menopause?
I'll take this. I think, as we alluded to before, just start the dialogue. Be aware that the dialogue is open and it's universal. Stop making it something that's talked about behind closed doors. Usually, the closed doors in a female toilet. You know, everybody, as was again mentioned earlier on, everybody is impacted by menopause. Some women have a greater time going through it than other women, but most women are finding it difficult to go through. And until it becomes an open topic of conversation and not something that's somehow, you know, dirty or uncomfortable or not disclosed or hidden, I don't think we've got a platform from which we're going to be able to talk about it and talk about what the issues are.
Thanks.
Just, you know, until we start talking about it, people aren't going to be comfortable talking about it, so start talking about it.
Yeah. In the context of work and careers, do you think that social media makes imposter syndrome worse?
Yes.
Yeah.
As the mother of a 15-year-old teenager, she's pretty confident, but I see her and her friends, and the things that happen on social media are horrendous. I've come off all social media apart from LinkedIn now, because I just have decided it's not good for mental health. After a while, people are either on there, you know, telling everybody how awful their lives are, or telling them conversely how wonderful their lives are. Most people's lives are, you know, we just dribble along quite comfortably in the ordinary sort of lane, and therefore social media promotes something that is not quite true to life somewhere along the line.
Okay, and we've got one more question. Many companies are now offering excellent family leave for both parents. How do you think this will impact the gender gap?
I'll take that. Because it's a big topic. It would be fantastic if it was actually real. It will change a lot, because women by default take much more responsibilities when the children come along. You know, we tend to then take part-time jobs because it's difficult to juggle the whole thing. Career, you know, progression gets, you know, derailed. All the mental load that go for hours. Trust me, that's what I do for living. But there is one thing. The problem is that when men take, even if it's on the paper, and you could take this paternity leave, the effects of the career are already bad enough on women. They're even worse on men. Like, I have friends that done it. I said, wow, that's so fantastic. It's like, yeah, Julia, but you do realize that my career was it for me. And I'm very happy to have done it for the children, and for my relationship with the children and the family. But that is what happens. So it will only make a difference if companies and us as employees and accept the fact that taking time to stay with the family is okay. It doesn't mean that we are less committed to work, that we care less about work. We just have different priorities for, you know, that time. I know of women that have been told coming back from maternity, you left the team down. How do you dare to come back and think that you're going to have your same job as before? True story. Stories, you know, it's plenty of this. But if that happens to women, imagine what can happen to men. So we really need to make a shift and make it. I think in that the governments have an importance. Like in the Scandinavian, I think it was in Sweden. Now the government made it mandatory, and the family gets 1 year, 6 months the men, 6 months the women. You can't swap it. So if the man doesn't take it, the family gets 6 months, and that's it. And that means that the men are more encouraged and is more, you know, accepted, because who would be the silly family that gives away 6 months of paid leaves? So yeah, in theory it's a good idea, but it depends on the implementation and the culture of the company.
Yeah.
That's a really important point, isn't it? Because a lot of men have really discovered during COVID that they actually really like their children and do like spending time with them, and they're quite capable of taking them in the car to wherever they need to go to. But there'll be a real shame if that gets lost, because the relationship between men and children is really important.
I think this one though, isn't it? It's back to that, my earlier point. We're still on a journey and maybe it's still too early to tell how this is actually going to map out over the long term. You know, what is the impact, but also how do we make sure that we've got the right support in place for both men and women that are taking family leave, but also you know, the managers that are working with them. So I think we've probably got a way to go on this one to see how will it actually impact the gender gap over the longer term.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's all we've got time for today. So thank you all again for joining today on this webinar and just bringing some of those themes to life. It's been really great to hear your views and sharing some of your experiences. So thank you to all of the panel for that, really appreciated, and also for everyone that's taken the time to join to watch and listen along. If you did want to read the report, it's on our website, simplifyconsulting.co.uk. So I hope you can download it there if you'd like to read more. Thank you very much once again, and goodbye everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.